When Grandpa died, he didn't leave behind money, jewelry, or land. He left me a single brown envelope, and on the front, written in shaky handwriting, were 5 chilling words: "Don't open this here, run." At first, I thought it was some kind of joke, one of Grandpa's cryptic pranks. He used to tell wild stories when I was a kid about secret wars, hidden towns, and people who could erase your past like it never existed. My mum always said he was just dramatic. But sitting there in the funeral home, holding that envelope, I could feel something was different. His handwriting trembled, but the ink was pressed deep into the paper like he wanted to make sure those words never faded. After the service, I slipped the envelope into my jacket and drove to my car. But when I turned the key, I noticed something strange. The same black SUV I'd seen outside Grandpa's nursing home last week was parked across the street again. The engine was running. At first, I brushed it off as coincidence. But when I pulled out of the parking lot, it pulled out too. That's when I remembered Grandpa's words. "Don't open this here." I drove for nearly 2 hours past farms, gas stations, and stretches of highway that barely had a signal. Finally, I stopped at a quiet rest area, locked my doors, and opened the envelope. Inside was a map, a photo, and a small, folded note. The photo stopped me cold. It was old. Taken some time in the 70s, Grandpa stood beside 2 men in military uniforms, but one of them looked exactly like my father, who wasn't even born then. The note read, "If you found this, they've found me. Don't trust anyone who says they're from the government. Head to the cabin. The truth is buried beneath the floorboards." I stared at the words, my heart pounding. The cabin could only mean one place: Grandpa's old hunting cabin deep in the Smoky Mountains, the one my mum refused to visit after my dad disappeared there 20 years ago. I looked back at the map. Sure enough, a red X was drawn right over that spot. Before I could process what any of it meant, headlights flashed behind me. The same black SUV rolled into the rest area. 2 men got out, their silhouettes sharp against the light. I stuffed the note back into the envelope, started the car, and sped off into the night. I didn't know who they were or what they wanted, but somehow I knew this wasn't about Grandpa anymore. This was about my father. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. The drive to the cabin felt endless. The road twisted through miles of dark forest, the headlights cutting through fog so thick it looked alive. Every sound outside, the snap of branches, the cry of an owl made my pulse jump. Grandpa's note kept replaying in my head. The truth is buried beneath the floorboards. I reached the cabin just before sunrise. It looked exactly like I remembered it from childhood: drawing porch steps, windows clouded with dust, and the faint smell of pine and gasoline. But something about it felt wrong this time. The lock on the door was new, shiny, recently installed. I hesitated before stepping inside. The air was heavy, stale. A few of Grandpa's old hunting trophies still hung on the wall: deer heads, fishing photos, a faded map of Tennessee, but everything else looked stripped, like someone had already been here. I searched the place for hours, looking for anything that could explain Grandpa's note. Finally, in the corner of the living room, I noticed a section of floor that sounded hollow when I tapped it. I pried it open with a rusted crowbar, expecting maybe a box of letters or a stash of money. Instead, I found a metal briefcase, locked and engraved with strange numbers: September 17th, 81. That date burned into my mind. It was my birthday. I tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. The lock was digital, way too advanced for something that old. Then I remembered the map Grandpa left me. I pulled it out again and saw faint red marks in the corner: coordinates written in tiny handwriting. Beneath them was a single word: backup. Before I could think, I heard Ithaca engine outside. I peeked through the curtain. The same black SUV was parked halfway down the dirt road, its lights off, but I could see movement to figures. Stepping out slowly, I grabbed the briefcase and darted out the back door. Running through the woods, my lungs ached, but adrenaline kept me moving. I didn't know where I was going, just away. After what felt like forever, I stumbled onto an old dirt trail and hid behind a fallen tree. The SUV's engine roared closer, lights sweeping through the trees. I could hear voices, men shouting in code words I didn't recognize. Then, through the fog, I caught something that froze my blood. One of the men was holding a file. With my name on it. "Orders are clear," one of them said. "If he has the case, he's priority." I stayed perfectly still until their voices faded into the distance. When I finally caught my breath, I looked down at the briefcase again. For the first time, I noticed a small etched symbol on its side, an eagle, clutching arrows, and a key. That wasn't a hunting brand. That was the seal of the Department of Defense. I didn't move for a long time. My breath came out in white clouds, my hands gripping the cold metal case, like it was the only thing keeping me alive. The Department of Defense. What could my grandfather, retired mechanic from Tennessee, possibly have to do with the government? When the SUV's sound finally faded, I forced myself to stand and head deeper into the woods. My phone had no signal, and I knew going back wasn't an option. So, I followed the old trail until I reached a ranger's cabin about 2 miles away. The place was empty, but there was a landline and power. I plugged in the case's keypad and waited. It flickered to life, asking for a 6-digit code. My mind immediately went back to the engraving on the top. September 17th, 81, my birthday. I typed it in. The lock clicked. Inside wasn't money or weapons, it was a stack of sealed documents, a military ID badge, and a faded photo of Grandpa in uniform. Except this time, his name tag didn't say Lawson. It said C.D. Murdoch. My chest tightened. Murdoch wasn't our last name, at least, it wasn't supposed to be. There was also a smaller envelope inside, marked "In case they find you first." I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "They told you I was a mechanic. They lied. They told you your father died in a fire. They lied again. Find the warehouse in Oak Ridge, Unit 47. That's where it all started." Oak Ridge. I knew that Namit was one of the top secret towns from the Manhattan Project, a place tied to nuclear research and classified experiments. Before I could read more, the landline phone on the wall suddenly rang. Once, twice, 3 times, I froze. No one should have known I was here. On the 4th ring, I picked it up, whispering, "Hello." A low voice replied, calm and direct. "Jake Lawson, or should I say, Jake Murdoch. Your grandfather warned you not to open it." "Who is this?" I demanded. The voice ignored me. "They're coming for you, and not just because of what's in that case. Your family name was erased for a reason. Leave the woods, go north." Then the line went dead. I stood there, the silence pressing in like a weight. My hands were shaking. I looked down at the ID badge again, Grandpa's face, staring back at me, younger, in military uniform. Next to his title were the words, Project Echo Division. Whatever he'd been part of, it wasn't just secret. It was something the government had buried so deep, they'd erased our entire family to keep it hidden. By the time I reached Oak Ridge, the sun had already set. The town looked normal, quiet streets, diners, old brick factories, but underneath the calm, it felt wrong. Like every shadow was watching. I followed Grandpa's note to Unit 47, a rusted warehouse on the edge of town, surrounded by a chain-link fence and warning signs that read, "Government property, keep out." The gates were locked, but the padlock looked new. I cut through the fence, slipped inside, and moved quickly, staying low. Inside, the air smelled of dust and oil. Rows of covered crates filled the floor, some stamped with serial codes, others unmarked. I turned on my flashlight and swept it across the wall's military logos. Faded, but still visible. U.S. Department of Defense, Project Echo Division. The same emblem from the briefcase. I found a staircase leading down. The steps creaked under my weight, and when I reached the basement, I saw rows of filing cabinets, some open, others pried apart like someone had searched them before. One drawer was labeled Personnel Archives. I opened it and froze. Inside were dozens of birth certificates. Some names were blacked out. Others looked altered. And in the middle of the stack was one with my father's name, except next to it, under date of death, someone had written in red ink, classified. That's when I heard the sound footsteps upstairs. Slow, careful. I turned off my flashlight and ducked behind a crate. The footsteps grew louder, followed by the metallic click of a gun being loaded. "Lawson," a voice called out. "You shouldn't have come here." It was Agent Reeves, the same man from the SUV, the fake Interpol badge. I stayed still, barely breathing. Reeves' voice echoed through the room. "You think your grandfather was a hero? He wasn't. He was a liability. He exposed Project Echo to the wrong people, and your father paid the price for it." I clenched my fists. "You killed him, didn't you?" I said quietly. Reeves stopped. "No. He killed himself trying to save you." Before I could react, another voice came from the shadows. "That's not true." I turned. A figure stepped out from the far side of the basement, gray hair. A limp, but familiar eyes. It was my father. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. I'd seen his grave. I'd lived with his death for 20 years. But there he was, alive, standing between me and the man who'd hunted me for days. Reeves sneered. "You should have stayed dead, Murdoch." My father looked at me, his voice shaking. "Son, there's no time to explain. You need to leave with the case. Everything you've ever believed about this family, it was a cover for something bigger than any of us." Then I heard the first gunshot. The gunshots shattered the silence, echoing off the steel walls. Sparks burst from a metal beam beside me as I ducked behind a crate. My ears rang, the air filled with the smell of gunpowder and dust. Reeves fired again, shouting, "It's over, Murdoch. You should have stayed buried." But my father, alive, real, bleeding from a graze on his arm, grabbed me and pulled me toward the back of the basement. "There's a tunnel," he hissed. "Your grandfather built it. Move." I barely had time to process anything. We stumbled through the rows of filing cabinets as bullets ripped through the metal drawers behind us. My father shoved open a maintenance hatch, revealing a narrow passage lined with old bricks and pipes. We crawled through it, the sound of Reeves' footsteps closing in above us. After a few hundred feet, the tunnel opened into a hidden chamber. I flicked on my flashlight and froze. Dozens of metal crates were stacked neatly. Each marked Echo property of USGOV, IM, Side 1. Shattered glass vials glinted in the beam. Others held files stamped top secret. "What is this place?" I whispered. My father sank against the wall, breathing hard. Project Echo wasn't just research. It was human testing, memory extraction, identity replacement. They erased soldiers' minds and rebuilt them as covert assets. Grandpa tried to stop it when he realized they were testing on civilians. I stared at him, horrified. "And you?" "I was one of them," he said. "They wiped me clean after I helped your grandfather steal the case. I woke up years later, with no past, no family, just orders to protect something I couldn't remember. Until now." Tears stung my eyes, but there was no time for emotion. Reeves' voice echoed down the tunnel. "Jake, you can't hide forever. You open that vault, and you expose everything, including your own father's crimes." My father looked at me, desperate. "Jake, listen. The files in that case, they're proof of what they did. If you get them out, the truth will destroy men like Reeves. But if you stay, neither of us leaves alive." Before I could answer, Reeves appeared at the tunnel entrance, gun raised. My father stepped in front of me, shouting, "Run, son," and fired the last bullet in his pistol. The shot hit the ceiling, bringing down part of the tunnel. Dust and smoke filled the air. Reeves went down under falling debris. I grabbed the case and ran through the collapsing chamber. My father's voice fading behind me. I didn't stop until I reached the surface that night. I drove until morning and sent every file, every document, to every major news agency I could find. Within a week, Project Echo was headline news. The government denied everything, but the world saw the truth. My father's name and grandpa's were finally cleared. Now, I keep that old briefcase locked in my home. Sometimes I still hear my father's words echoing in my head. They built Project Echo to erase the truth. You were born to bring it back. And I did.